War Pugs. Well, I can tell you guys one thing. I can tell you one thing and one thing alone. I've known about this project since very early on. I've known about this project for quite some time. And I have been looking forward to it the entire time. Because this has been something that I wanted to see done correctly. This is something that I wanted to see done well. It's been something that I myself have talked about. I talked about it very early on when I started doing lore. It was quite literally the second Mistakes of the Emperor that I made. Talking about what happened with Angron. Why Angron is the one Primarch out of all the Primarchs that had every reason to turn on the Emperor, that had every reason to do what he did, who got taken advantage of the worst out of all of his brother Primarchs. And while I do say that Perturab was my favorite out of the Traitor Primarchs, Angron comes in at a screaming close second. And yes, I do mean screaming. Warpugs, this project, and it is a project, is... Yeah, I've been waiting on this one for a while. I had a hand in it. I'm happy to say I've had a hand in it. I'm not really going to go into how much of a hand I had in it. It was not as much as I would have. It is like not nearly as much as I would have liked. As far as, you know, as far as some things, but I'm happy to be involved with it no matter what. I'm telling you guys, like this has been quite a long time coming. And I've known, like, I knew how much work went into this, and it's just insane. It's just insane. I've been waiting for them to reach out to me telling me that this was on its way out, and they reached out to me the other day, and I was like, oh boy, here it comes. Warpugs, this is Angron from Warrior Tier. And you know already that this is going to be top-notch. You already know. Cat, stop it. My cat is Angron. Now. Oh my goodness. This is one of the last live streams I'm going to be doing from this address. I'm going to be moving soon, and I can't wait to get out. I can't wait to get out of here. I can't wait. It is a thing. And, like, I can't wait to build up. I can't wait to continue on at the new location I'm going to be at. I can't wait for that to happen. But this is going to be one of the last live streams I do from this address. I've decided to do a series of live streams the last couple of weeks I'm here. And it's going to be a lot of Battletech. A lot of Battletech. So if you're a Battletech fan, I'm going to be here for that. Most definitely. Thank you for joining me. Warpugs. I'm telling you, it has been an absolute delight every single chance I've had to work with Warrior Tier, to be around Warrior Tier. Yes, the trains, the trucks, the motorcycles, it's all going to be finally gone. Working with Warrior Tier on any project they have it has been excellent. I can only say thank you so many times to them, because not only have they asked for my input on things, they've also wanted to work with me on things that I've done. I'll be honest with you guys, it's because of the stress levels that I've had about this move. I don't take this kind of stuff well, and we've been If you're really wondering what's been happening, why there hasn't been much going out to the lore channel and things like that, it's because I have been under a phenomenal amount of stress, and I mean an absolutely phenomenal amount of stress for myself. I don't like it when things change radically, and things are changing radically. So, it's been a thing for me. It's been a real thing for me just to kind of adapt, and I am. If you're a Patreon, I do apologize. I haven't been uploading to Patreon nearly as much as I used to. It's just been a lot of stress. And it's actually it's messing with me so bad that it's actually messing with my sleep cycle, everything else like that. But I'm telling you that at the end of the day, when I get out there, it's going to be a whole different ball game. I got some things I have planned. I'm planning on building a soundstage, all this other kind of stuff. It's crazy. It's just crazy. Okay, it's just it's nuts how much is changing. Not like, and it's strange to me the within 20 minutes of Warrior Tier telling me that they were uploading Angron. Within the day, I hit 25,000 subscribers. I hit 25,000 subscribers. I'm closing on a house in 2 weeks. I have the best community that I could ever ask for. And that's not bad for a guy starting out with a Slaneshi possessed camera and a $25 headset. It's not bad. It's not bad. I have the best damn community on the planet. Warpugs, we're here for Angron, Eater of Worlds. This is not going to be a happy story. This is not going to be a happy story no matter what. This is going to be abjectly horrific. If you don't know anything about Angron, this is going to be brutal, and this is going to be ugly. Avalon, oh yeah. And I hope to be working with you soon. This is going to be brutal. This is going to be ugly. This is Angron. Warpugs, let's get into it.
How far up do you want to go? I'm not breathing well up here.
The plum brandy from last night could be to blame.
Oh, quiet. Tell me, what are we doing up here?
You saw the same thing I did. We're not turning back now.
The slavers ascended the frigid, snow-covered range, searching for what could have caused the blinding flash of light above the Deshelica ridge that they saw hours before.
I did see it, but I'm starting to think that whatever it was,
Leon,
it wasn't worth the trip.
Stop. What is that?
As the slavers continued walking, they saw what appeared to be a pile of nearly 50 corpses in the distance. The slavers drew their rifles as they advanced.
What are those?
They're dead, whatever they are.
Well, look. Is that a boy?
Look at the size of him. We're gonna be rich.
These are Zeno's corpses. Did he kill him? Who is he?
Our biggest payday ever, if he survives.
Yes. Sandman of Terra, Nicholas Garoth. Latara Sarin in this. Yes. Yes!
slavers returned to Decimation, the young warrior contained in a net. He was sold to House Thalkir, one of the most powerful clans on Nuceria. This clan was part of the wealthy elite, known by the slaves of the world as the High Riders. They lived behind their walls in lavish palaces, while the rest lived in poverty. The High Riders of Nuceria, being the tyrant rulers that they were, orchestrated violent skirmishes that took place within the many gladiator pits. In the capital city of Decimation, these barbarous contests took many forms. The gladiator slaves were often pitted against each other. Other times, they were thrown into the pits to fight abhuman beasts or witches. More often than not, a battle would end with one side conceding defeat, as this would allow the High Riders to keep an ample inventory of fighters.
Right.
Sometimes, these fights were large group battles. Other times, they were one-on-one duels. No two pit fights were the same. But what was consistent was the crowd of roaring Nucerians that turned out to watch the brutal, inhumane contest unfold. These poor, downcast people would flock to the arenas and wager what little coin they had on their chosen warriors. When Angron was introduced to the gladiator pits, he was confused and afraid. He found himself unable to comprehend what was happening. Standing on the first step of a large, pyramid-shaped platform with nearly 100 others, he was surrounded by a thunderous crowd of chanting hymns. Metallic spheres, known to the slaves as maggots' eyes, flew overhead and emitted sounds and unusual voices to the uneasy gladiators below.
Which one of these warriors possesses the strength needed to endure the devil's tears? Place your wagers!
Suddenly, Angron heard a collective gasp from the other slaves as massive doors on the pit walls opened and a foul-smelling liquid began to pour into the pit. Angron did not understand what they were saying, but was quickly beginning to comprehend the words that the slaves were speaking.
Quick, boy, grab my hand.
He watched in horror as someone made contact with the black liquid and screamed in agony.
There's no room.
A woman slipped trying to make it up to the next stair and unleashed a gut-wrenching scream. The acid continued to fill the pit and submerge the bottom steps. With less room to stand, those remaining on the platform began to panic. Desperation began to overcome the remaining slaves as only a few steps remained. They stopped helping those around them and started to fend others off so they could survive. Angron maneuvered the quickly sinking pyramid flawlessly. A man charged at Angron and attempted to shove him into the acid, but it was to no avail. Angron was simply too strong. It wasn't until no other options were available that Angron began to physically overpower the remaining slaves. He countered incoming punches and sent his attackers scrambling into the acid below. One of the flying spheres idled above the frantic gladiators and seemed to taunt them.
Fascinating! Grown men being outmatched by a young boy! Who will remain standing?
Near the top of the pyramid, only Angron and a hulking man covered in scars remained. The man threw a barrage of powerful punches, but Angron absorbed them like they were nothing and stood unmoved like a rockcrete wall. Understanding that death was imminent, Angron's instincts took over. He punched the man in the stomach with unimaginable force and sent him into the acid. The crowd erupted into a deafening applause.
Behold, people of Decimation! For your coin and happiness, we have a victor! We present this boy who has won the devil's tears! My child, what do you call yourself?
Although Angron was rapidly understanding more and more of the words he was hearing, he was unable to speak, not sure how to form words himself.
No name, boy. We shall name you ourselves then. Angron Thalkir, child of the mountain.
The crowd began cheering and screaming once again. In Angron's first trial, he stood victorious.
So, Sorry. In Angron's early years. Thank you, Troy. Angron really isn't a showman. Gladiators should be WWE. Dead entertainers are not practical. This is true. If you didn't know, thank you, Troy. If you didn't know, like, Games Workshop took from a lot of sources coming up with the Primarchs. A lot of sources. Angron's story is pretty much Spartacus from ancient Rome. And the Luduses. Spartacus was a slave taken from Thrace. It was rumored that he had served with the army before, but had abandoned them at some point. That was the rumor. It wasn't really ever confirmed, and nobody knows his name before he became Spartacus. But he was taken to a ludus in Capua, where he was trained as a gladiator. Angron's story mirrors his in a great many ways, and the Roman influence in Deshay is evident. Okay, it's just outright evident. Now, what they were talking about is true. It's the same thing. When it boiled down to it, they didn't want to kill gladiators because they wanted a good fighting stock, and it was a way to keep the populace in line for the most part. Entertain them with bread and circuses, blood and games. That's pretty much the way it worked. Who are the other Primarchs based off of? Well, some of those are really easy. Guilliman, Russ, Harold, I can't pronounce his last name, sorry. Let's see, Marcus Aurelius for Revolt Guilliman. Let's see. God, like, you have to ask that, my brain just completely flatlines. Alfarius and Omegon is definitely the CIA and the NSA. I'm just saying. If you look, you can actually find the historical inferences. The Lion, of course, King Arthur, other Bretonian myths, those things like that. Now my brain is flatlined. Sanguinius is Jesus, of course, the great glorious winged hawk boy.
So, he was soon to learn that this was only the beginning.
I've actually made quite a few videos dealing with the Primarchs.
After surviving the Devil's Tears, Angron was promptly brought to his new home. Each day, after the raucous, raving crowds filed out of the arenas and the ruthless exhibitions had concluded, those that survived the fight were escorted by armored machines out of the pits and into the caves below the arenas. It was here that Angron would be kept with the other slaves, and where he would remain until he was summoned once again to combat.
I didn't think you had it in you. You made the Falkir clan rich today.
Angron looked around the dimly lit cave, observing the others who were kept captive. These people were battered and broken, both physically and mentally. A man with dried blood all over his body and dark purple bruises on his arms and face stood silently with his head against the wall. He looked at Angron, staring directly into his eyes.
You should get some rest, boy.
Angron looked at the slave with an uncomfortable gaze.
You're the boy from the mountains, you know?
Yes.
I heard them up there, cheering and screaming for you. I always hear the crowd, but I never heard them so loud before. The caves were shaking so hard we all thought it was an earthquake.
Where am I?
I wouldn't worry about that. I'd worry about getting some rest. If you're able to get to Shea, that entranced on your first battle, then you're gonna be spending a lot of time on the hot dust. Which means you need to rest.
Hot dust.
Close your eyes, boy.
The man heeded his own advice, closing his eyes and slumping back against the cave wall. Angron looked around at the others. Everyone was in some state of pain or discomfort. Some appeared to be having nightmares, their bodies shaking even though they didn't seem to be conscious. Others simply stared at the ground, quietly talking to themselves, their inaudible muffles fading away under their breath. It was never truly quiet down in the caves. Arena guards were always loudly moving about, rattling chains and yelling at the captives. Slaves would be shuffled in and out, whether they were being summoned to the pits or new prisoners had arrived. He closed his eyes, lost in his own thoughts, his mind racing throughout the night. The mental toll the caves took on one's psyche was dangerous to most men.
If Lehman and Angron switched worlds, how would that change things? Lehman would have been more of a berserker than Angron. Lehman would have fell into the gladiator role well. He would have fell into that role well. Angron would have saved the Imperium, bar none. And remember, if you're wondering who to blame for Angron, this entire story here, just repeat after me, #blame Eldrad. Just say it.
Angron didn't yet know it, but he was not like most men.
You, over there! You two, get up, now!
3 armored machine guards stalked through the caves, rounded everyone up, and prodded them with a long, electric-tipped pole.
Mountain boy, get up! You're going to the hot dust!
The selected gladiators were lined up and marched into a small anteroom. This room was completely empty, with the exception of a wooden table and some racks that held a variety of weapons. Those that were aware of what was going on immediately swarmed the table,
No, he
eager to get
wouldn't
their
have
hands
anything
on a
else.
rusted axe or a battle-worn knife. All that remained when Angron went to the table was a helmet, with remnants from the last battle still inside.
Everybody, line up!
The 3 armored machines stood behind them, nudging them closer to a gigantic door. The door opened, and Angron was blinded momentarily as piercing sunlight poured into the room. They were pushed out onto the arena floor by the armored machines. The surface was covered in dust that would blow across the arena with each gust of wind. The hot dust.
Who will survive? Place your wagers and choose your warrior wisely.
Unlike the Devil's Tears, there would be no acid flowing through the arena, no jumping to platforms to survive. This contest was all about combat. The fighting began, with gladiators swinging axes and spilling blood across the arena, working the crowd into a frenzy.
Angron Valkyr's dominance is on full display. The boy of the mountain continues to dominate.
Angron's first test on the hot dust was nothing short of mastery, fighting with the skill of a seasoned veteran. While only a boy, his physical strength was overwhelming. His agility and speed unmatched by any of his opponents. Always knowing where to be, when to strike, and never leaving himself vulnerable to enemy attacks.
Thank you, Troy. Could you imagine if the Eldar adapted Angron? Would he help with his empathy powers to fend off Slaanesh, or would he be corrupted? A nice what-if story. #blame Eldrad. All these hypotheticals go out of the window when you consider that Eldrad's a moron. Okay? That's where it begins and ends. Because Eldrad's the one that sent the Eldar. In the book, in the lore where it describes what actually happened when Angron first landed on Nuceria, Eldrad sent scores of warriors after Angron. A score is more than 20. A score is more than 20, so scores of warriors means at the very least, 40 Eldar warriors went after Angron when he was essentially a toddler. Maybe a little bit more than a toddler. Probably close to around maybe approximate age 4 to 5. Eldrad's an idiot.
After his first battle on the hot dust, Angron was the last man standing. And in subsequent fights, he would be the last man standing over and over again.
Angron Valkyr has conquered the gladiators. Angron has done it once again. He is the winner. Angron is unstoppable. Can anyone best the boy of the mountain in combat?
Weeks turned into months, and months into years. And Angron's domination of the gladiator pits continued. By the time he had reached the age of 10 Terran years, he had grown to a massive size. Each time he stepped onto the hot dust, the crowd was stunned to see how large Angron had become. He was the most revered warrior that had ever stepped foot on Nuceria, and the locals who came to watch named him the Lord of the Red Sands. The violence within the gladiator pits had shaped Angron's life, and through this combat, he and the other gladiators held a mutual respect for each other. They had true camaraderie. Being locked away in chains together, they understood each other's pain. They felt each other's suffering. As a prisoner to the High Riders, Angron forged many relationships with the other gladiators, but none of them were as significant as that with Onomaeus. Onomaeus was a veteran of the slave pits, having survived over a decade of combat trials and imprisonment. He wasn't quite the physical threat that Angron was, but he was incredibly strong and agile in his own right. And over time, he became a mentor and a father figure to Angron.
You did well out there.
It's going to get dark, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to get dark. Get your tissues, because we're about to have issues.
Angron.
Angron sat quietly with a blank expression.
I know what you're feeling. I'm tired too.
The new one that was out there with us today, his first time on the hot dust. I knew he wouldn't make it out alive. I saw everything go dark for him, and I wished it were me.
I don't believe that, Angron.
X in chat if you
It's
blame
true,
Eldrad.
Onomaeus. He's free from it all now. No chains, no being made to fight suffering men, no more High Rider scum or being taunted by the damned maggot's eyes. He's free.
The only life Angron had ever known,
All right, Leon, you have
one
a
of
nice night,
pain,
bud.
violence, and suffering, was starting to break him.
He's dead. That isn't freedom. Freedom is outside of these walls. The High Riders rule today. Will they rule tomorrow, or 1 year from now? No one knows. We could see the other side of these walls one day.
Onomaeus was right. For as empty as he felt, Angron would not give up hope of finding freedom. The bond between the two only grew stronger, and they made easy work of anyone who faced them on the hot dust. They were such a formidable duo that the High Riders decided one day to push them to their limits. After defeating a group of mutant beasts with heads that resembled an animal more than a human, Angron and Onomaeus faced their gravest challenge yet.
Thank you, Troy. The mistakes of the Emperor Mechanicus edition. Oh, good God.
People of Decimation, Angron and Onomaeus have survived their first battle today. Will they survive their second? This battle, I assure you, is not to be missed.
Angron had faced countless foes in this arena. The Devil's Tears, witches with psychic powers, monsters, but nothing he had battled before compared to what was next. As the arena doors opened, 2 metal cages were brought out into the dusty arena surface, and as soon as they laid eyes on their opponents, Onomaeus was immediately overcome with dread. 2 Ogryn monstrosities, roughly the size of Angron himself, were slowly let out of their respective cages.
Mama lies.
It wasn't their iron armor.
If you don't get that reference, yeah. If you don't get that reference, this got really dark really fast.
or even their sheer size that terrified Onomaus. They were both wearing a remissum, which indicated that they were too aggressive and unpredictable to be kept with the other slaves, as the remissum was only worn by those who had received implants known simply as the Butcher's Nails.
Crush the little ones.
The fight commenced, and it was quite possibly the most fierce battle that had ever taken place in the arena. Both sides attacked each other with unprecedented strength, exchanging brutal and unforgiving assaults. And while this was the most challenging fight Angron had ever encountered, it was the first time that Angron wasn't fighting only for himself. He was fighting for Onomaus. Many times throughout the 17-minute brawl, Angron sacrificed a wide-open attack on the Ogrins to prevent Onomaus from suffering a fatal blow. In the end, Angron's strength and skill in battle proved to be too much, as the skirmish was punctuated with one final swing of Angron's axe.
Okay, if you're wondering where the Mama Lies line comes from, one of the first things I ever saw from Warrior Tier, and the one that put me on the radars, prospectively, I think, was their video on the Ogryn. And one of the things he said all the time was, "Mama doesn't lie." And so this tale got really dark really fast for other reasons.
Angron the Unbeaten and Onomaus the Bear of Wolsham have done it again. What a magnificent performance! Now, for their final test. The most treacherous match yet. In a fight to the death, Angron versus Onomaus.
Violence was all that Angron had ever known. From the moment he emerged from the warp, surrounded by Xenos who wanted him dead, to the very moment where he stood in the arena, set to face off against the only father he had ever known. His entire life had been one of savagery, but this was too far for Angron.
No.
I'm sorry. This is not a request, Angron. You and Onomaus are to fight to the death. There is not an alternative option.
Onomaus, understanding that nothing good would come from Angron's refusal, pleaded with him. But Angron was resolute. Onomaus was like a father to him, and he would not take part in his execution. The crowd suddenly burst into laughter, humiliating the High Riders in the process.
Refusing the orders of the Highborn, are we? Well, Angron Thalkir, we have a way of handling this behavior. People of Nuceria, how shall we deal with this insubordination?
And in that moment, a chant from the crowd ensued. One word that would change the fate of Angron forever.
If you're wondering, this is the part of the story where it goes from everything sucks to welcome to the Grimdark. Here we go.
Cat, move.
In stark contrast to when he was being pulled out of the caves, he was heavily sedated now, and the surgery could proceed as planned. One can assume that if Angron knew what the Technomancers were about to do to him and how it would shape his future, that he would have swallowed his pride and killed Onomaus on the hot dust. But there was no turning back now. The origins of the Butcher's Nails are a mystery. Dating back to the Dark Age of technology, these cybernetic implants are a technical marvel. Some view the Butcher's Nails as a mortal curse. Others see them as indispensable enhancements. Regardless of perspective, the nails are incredibly effective. Empathy, morality, joy, love, any emotion that is not anger is pushed aside, degrading over time until it eventually withers away completely. Angron was suddenly jolted from his sedated state. His eyes opened so wide that he felt like they might bulge out of his head. Split-second flashes of colors and long dormant memories perplexed him.
These are, Xeno's corpses.
He had never experienced a sensation like this. An evanescent chill ran through his body before it suddenly changed course, and his blood began to boil.
The pain in my head is unbearable. Why are you looking at me like this? You people are monsters. Why is it so hot in here? Why are these lights so bright? What did I do to deserve all of this?
Look at the size of it.
The High Riders are going to bleed for what they have done to me.
My fair people of Nuceria, the wait is over. The legendary battle that you have been anticipating. Angron and Onomaeus will battle to the death.
It was an honor, Angron, to battle alongside you for so many years.
Angron nearly killed Onomaeus with the first punch that connected. And in the first instance of many more to come, Angron was lost to the nails. The pain he was inflicting upon Onomaeus and the blood that was staining the sands red were the only things soothing the pulsing pain from the nails. His vision went dark, and all he could hear was the earth-shaking roar of the crowd chanting his name. When he came out of the coma-like state he was in from the nails, he was somewhere completely different. Gone was the hot dust and the screaming Deshaeans in the crowd. Angron now found himself in a dark cell, his hands and ankles chained to the cave wall. His memory was fragmented, with everything after his refusal to fight being blurry. The butcher's nails throbbed inside of Angron's head so badly that it almost drowned out the conversation from the arena guards down the hall.
Ha! I made more coin off that one fight than I've made from the past 3 years of work.
Gloat some more, why don't you? We're all dying to hear it.
As you wish. Is someone disappointed that they wagered on the wrong brute?
Yeah. Get a good laugh. I'll admit it. I expected more of a fight than that, and if Angron would have lost, I would have been twice as rich as you right now.
Ha! You didn't really think that old man was going to survive, did you? I don't think the fight had even gone 20 seconds before Angron caved his head in.
And it was at this moment when reality came crashing down onto Angron. The only father he had ever known was dead, and he was the one who had killed him. For the first time in his life, he began openly weeping. His cries were so powerful that the cave walls began to violently shake. He sobbed uninterrupted for 3 days, and when he finally stopped, only one singular thought remained. Vengeance.
So, one of the things that really turned my views on Angron was when the lore of this actually came out. When Angron came out of the surgery, they set him loose on Onomaeus pretty much instantaneously. They set him loose right there and then. Thank you, Troy. I think the nails had to be an AI interface. Actually, the nails in a normal person would be fine. You could live with them. You could deal with them. With Angron, they were something completely different. With the World Eaters, they were something completely different. But, Angron howled like an animal for days on end after he found out he killed Onomaeus.
Angron vowed that he would escape from his chains and make the High Riders pay for the death of Onomaeus. Angron spent the next number of years teaching the gladiators in the pits how to fight.
This is with the nails, by the
bond
way.
between Angron and the remaining slaves grew so strong that he began to look at them as his brothers and sisters.
By the way, this event where they put the nails into his head, this is what ruined Angron's special gift as a Primarch. Angron's ability to empathize Angron was set to be more noble than Sanguinius, just based off his ability to empathize, and he was going to be the glue that held the Imperium together. And this is look at what they did to my boy.
Angron wasn't only teaching them to fight, he was also plotting their escape. And on one momentous
Orcs would have
day,
been nicer.
Angron and his gladiators put their plan into action.
Here stands 100 gladiators of Nuceria, prepared for battle. How many will survive? Place your wagers and enjoy the festivities.
This is it, Jakura. The day has finally come.
I'm ready, Angron. We all are.
As soon as the horn blared, the gladiators began their escape. The Deshanes were in attendance to see Angron Thalkir slaughter his opponents. But to their complete and utter horror, they bore witness to a far more chilling event. The slaves in the pits hoisted each other up into the crowd, allowing them to scale the barriers and run freely through the aisles of tiered seats. Angron and his brothers and sisters were revolting, and the members of the crowd were their first targets. As they began attacking the retreating civilians, the rest of the crowd was completely enveloped in fear. They ran as fast as they could, screaming at the top of their lungs. The Nucerian kin guard attempted to regain control, and the gladiators in the stands were met with a barrage of gunfire. But it was too late. The evading Deshanes running for their lives created a stampede, and many of the kin guards were trampled. While the gladiators in the crowd continued sowing chaos and butchering all who stood in their way, Angron and those who stayed in the pit forced their way back into the caves and freed the remaining prisoners. Armored guards rushed down to the caves to stop the revolt, firing laser weapons and rifles. But Angron, overcome by the thumping of the butcher's nails, unleashed his fury on them. Within the arena and the caves below it, the ground was littered with the bodies of the dead and injured. Angron and his warriors spilled out into the streets of Deshea and waged war against any of the High Riders that were foolish enough to stay and fight.
Can I just say this? Can I just say this right here? The visuals in this are amazing. The visuals in this are absolutely outstanding.
With sticks, rocks, and anything else they could muster, they viciously attacked those who had enslaved them for so many years. They butchered the High Riders, collecting their skulls and leaving their corpses in the streets. These gladiators razed the cities of Nuceria and set fire to the rubble that remained. In one Nucerian day, 31 Terran hours, the gladiators faced their well-equipped and heavily armed slavers head-on. And won. They were no longer malnourished, defenseless prisoners. They were the eaters of cities. By the time the harsh winter arrived, the gladiators had suffered significant casualties from the relentless High Riders. The Eaters of Cities were forced to retreat to the treacherous mountains of Deshea. When they had first escaped, there were thousands of gladiators who were eager to set fire to Nuceria. Over time, attacks from the Kin Guard and the unforgiving conditions of the Deshelica Ridge reduced their numbers to hundreds. And by the time they arrived in the cave that they now called home, only 56 remained.
We won't be able to stay here forever. You know this. They're going to find us eventually. And when they do...
You think they can defeat us?
Angron and his Eaters of Cities were free from the chains of the High Riders, but their situation was no less precarious. The freezing temperatures and lack of food proved to be a detriment to all of them. Angron had not eaten in weeks, saving any source of nourishment for his brothers and sisters.
No, but this mountain is slowly killing us, Chikura.
Angron spoke through gritted teeth and the pain of the butcher's nails.
I've been seeing more High Rider scouts appear searching the area. It won't be long until they find us. If we die fighting the High Riders, so be it. I would rather die fighting alongside you all than to slowly wither away on this mountain. Rest now. And if we have to face our last stand when the sun rises, that's what we'll do.
As the sun appeared over the horizon the next morning, Angron and his Eaters of Cities stood at the edge of the cave.
I can hear them coming, Angron.
Good. Let's make them pay for what they did to us.
The sound of the High Riders approaching was getting louder with each passing moment, and when they finally came within view, the nails in Angron's head pounded like war drums.
It's rather cold up here, Angron. Why don't you come back to where you belong? We don't take any of this personally. I can assure you, if you return to your rightful place, you have our word that we will forget any of this ever happened.
Oh, you have their word. That's
the
glorious.
High Riders were adorned in ridiculous outfits, wearing expensive furs and exotic animal skins. But it was the man's voice that drew Angron's ire.
Oh boy.
The maggot's eye. This was the voice that had haunted him for years. The voice that flew overhead and goaded him and the other gladiators.
Never. We will never go back.
You're acting like a child, Angron. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be.
This doesn't make sense. Why are they talking to us? There's so many of them.
Looking down at the hundreds of kin guards surrounding the Eaters of Cities, everything began to make sense in Angron's head. They didn't want to kill Angron. They needed him alive. The wealthy and technologically advanced High Riders had rebounded from the Eaters of Cities' attack. But without their standout warrior in the arena to fight, the Deshayan populace was no longer engrossed by the arena battles. And there was nothing more dangerous to the High Riders than the Deshayan people focusing on their own poverty.
Yep.
If you want me, you'll have to take me with your bare hands.
Well then, you've given us no other option. Just remember that this was your choice, Angron, not ours.
The High Riders opened fire on the Eaters of Cities, and 20 of them died in an instant. Angron watched his brothers fall by his side, being overpowered by the deadly Nucerian weaponry. He had his eyes fixated on the man who barked orders through the maggot's eyes. He launched himself at him and ripped him in two.
Oh, how's it feel to chew five
Angron
gum?
was unhinged, ready to throw himself at every last High Rider that dared to face him, when he was suddenly taken back by a blinding flash of light. The Emperor of Mankind appeared. Angron was frozen in...
Okay, there was a lot of talk when, I'll just say this, there was a lot of talk about how the Emperor was going to be voiced, and I was wondering how they were going to do this for so long. I like the way they decided to do this.
Place, unable to move. The psychic energy from the Emperor caused torment in Angron's head.
I'm not leaving this mountain. Ah! I'm not leaving my brothers here to die.
Angron hit the ground violently, shattering the tiles beneath him. He opened his eyes and struggled to understand what he was seeing. His battle brothers were gone, as were the High Riders. More curiously, he was no longer on the snow-covered Deshayan mountaintop. His eyes darted around the room, taking in the luxurious art pieces hanging on the walls and the warriors in golden armor towering over him as he struggled to his feet. As one of the warriors approached, Angron ripped the spear from his hand and impaled him with his own weapon. Before he could move to neutralize the other golden warriors, he was dazed by another flash of light.
No! My brothers are dying. I cannot abandon them. You don't choose my destiny. Let me out of this place. I know nothing of this legion you speak of. Nor do I care. I need to stand and fight on Nuceria.
In one final flash of light, Angron opened his eyes and was suddenly somewhere completely different. This time, he was all alone. He was surrounded by dark, stone walls and massive blue and white banners. Angron didn't know where he was, but he knew it wasn't where he was supposed to be. He should be fighting with his brothers and sisters on the Decimation Ridge. Everything happened so fast that his brain couldn't comprehend it, and the nails hammered away in pain as he tried to make sense of it all. Who was this Emperor, and what was this place that he had taken him to? As his mind raced and his emotions washed over him, a door at the top of a staircase opened. Light poured into the room and the silhouette of a man walked.
Troy, why, man? Why? Troy says it should have been Big E giving Guilford Godfrey's voice. Why? I can't think of anything to say. Oh, my son! I have great plans for you!
Walked in, closing the door behind him.
Oh,
my
God.
Lord, my Primarch. It's an extraordinary honor to stand in your presence. I must admit, I feared this day might never come.
Gear slowly descended the stairs, approaching Angron as he spoke.
We have traveled the stars for many, many years, anticipating your arrival.
As Gear continued his slow march towards his Primarch, Angron began to rise to his feet.
I have acted as the Legion commander in your absence, sire. But you are here now, and your Legion stands before you.
Angron stared at Gear, clenching his jaw like an iron grip.
We will honor you, my lord. We are here to serve you.
Serve me?
Yes, my lord.
Ooh.
We are here to serve you. In the name of the Emperor.
As Gear muttered those fateful words, Angron's blood boiled.
F and chat
the
for
nails
Gear.
pummeled away in his head, and Angron snarled at Gear as he looked down at him.
In the name of the Emperor?
F and chat. Bye, Gear. Love that. In case you had any idea, in case you just didn't know, Gear's dead. Gear is way dead, okay?
The Warhound's captain of the 8th Assault Company approached the door to the hall where Angron remained.
I got a feeling we're about to hear from a swell guy.
In an act of rage that left the entire Warhound's Legion baffled, Angron had executed Gear shortly after he entered the hall. At least 6 other Warhounds met the same fate as Gear after they reluctantly followed their former Legion commander. Karn stood outside of the door and quietly spoke to himself under his breath.
My Primarch, I assure you that we mean no disrespect or harm. In the name of the Emperor, if you would be willing to listen to what I have to say to you. We are your Legion. We are at your command.
Karn opened the door and slowly walked down the stairs. It was so dark in the room that Karn's eyes had difficulties adjusting. Even through the darkness, it was obvious that his Primarch had left the hall in shambles. The smell of blood was overpowering, and nearly every light in the room had been broken or ripped out of the wall.
My Primarch, I assure you.
Another warrior that enters the arena with no weapon. Babbling nonsense. Is this how all of you prepare to fight?
Karn couldn't see the Primarch, but he bellowed so loudly that he could hear him perfectly.
To fight? No, my lord, I am not here to fight. In the name of the Emperor.
No! The Emperor killed my brothers and sisters down there. Refuses to show himself to me.
My Primarch! I don't...
Why? Why are you all like this? Talking about this paper skin Emperor. Enough! Get to your feet and fight me now.
Sire, I am not here to harm you. You are my honorable leader. Our honorable leader. We are your warriors.
No. None of you are warriors. Warriors don't walk onto the hot dust without a weapon, speaking softly and... My warriors are dead now. I should have died with them on the mountain. But this Emperor took me from my warriors. Why do you call yourself warriors if you enter the hot dust and refuse to fight?
Karn stumbled to his feet and attempted to catch his breath as he collected himself.
My apologies, sire. I do not know what you speak of. This hot dust. Nor do I know of your battle on the mountain. I'm sorry for the death of your warriors. My brothers and I. We have waited for many years for your arrival. You are our Primarch. Our leader.
What are you saying? What is this Primarch? Why are you wasting my time?
I'm sorry, sire. Primarch.
Imagine being the Primarch's golden boy simply due to the fact that you endured an ass whipping that no one else could endure and survive, okay? That's literally how Karn got to his position. He was the 8th guy to walk up to Angron after the Emperor put him in what eventually would be the Conqueror, and he literally just survived the worst ass whipping of all mankind, okay? Thank you, Troy. All Big E needed to do was take over the planet and give Angron a thumbs up. Not hard. Drop the Warhounds in the area in the arena with flamers. This is true. There's so much more that the Emperor could have done. I legitimately... The reason he didn't do anything was because Nuceria was already in talks to join the Imperium peacefully. How many... I don't want to start ranting. Thank you, Troy.
Warriors, you are a Primarch. You are one of the sons of the Emperor.
What did you say to me? I am no son of any Emperor. The only father I ever knew, Onomaeus, died on Decimation.
A wave of emotion washed over Angron with the thought of Onomaeus. Karn was having difficulties breathing and could feel at least one broken bone in his leg. He was taken aback by Angron's complete lack of knowledge. He pondered whether he was truly unaware of who he was, or whether this was a ruse.
What I am saying to you, sire, as a Primarch, you are our leader. You were chosen to lead us.
I choose nothing. I did not choose to lead any of you. I was taken away from those that I chose to lead.
I understand. As your warriors, your servants, we do fight when necessary, but we will never fight you. We will fight for you. We fight the enemies of our
No!
the enemies of our legion.
There you go, that's much
Tyrants,
better.
Xenos.
Xenos.
Yes, aliens, impure creatures.
Yep.
Anyone that threatens humanity, the enemies of you, our Primarch.
Oh!
Angron stood quietly, pausing before he spoke again.
What is your name?
My name is Khan.
Khan. Where are we right now, Khan?
We are in your Triumph Hall, sire, on the Adamant Resolve. The Warhound's ship, your ship. We constructed this room upon learning of your impending arrival.
If we leave this room, if we walk through that door, what will happen?
You will be saluted by warriors, more like me, who are ready to serve you as you see fit. Warhound's legionnaires who will fight and die for you if need be.
Angron said nothing. He looked at Karn and extended his hand to help him up from the ground. They walked up the stairs together and through the door into the flagship's corridor. The hall outside of the chamber was lined with the Warhound Astartes. They stood neatly in order, a look of stunned shock on their faces as they stared intently at their Primarch.
Warhounds! Our Primarch has arrived. He has spilled the blood of hostiles on Nuceria. He led his brothers and sisters, the Eaters of Cities, in the mountains of Decimation. He is our commander, the leader of the Warhounds.
All of the Warhounds saluted Angron at once, placing a fist over their chest. Angron looked around slowly, taking in the sight of the lines of Astartes standing before him.
Sire, as your warriors, we will not be eaters of cities. We will be the eaters of worlds.
Angron stared directly into Draeger's eyes, and a smile slowly formed at the edges of his mouth.
World Eaters. Yes. You will be World Eaters.
If you think the party van's about to kick off, well, you ain't been paying attention. Things are about to suck.
Prior to Angron's discovery, the Warhounds were one of the last remaining legions without a Primarch.
18th,
They watched with silent envy as the other Primarchs slowly began to surface, witnessing firsthand how the legions changed for the better as their respective gene fathers appeared. And then, the day finally came. After decades of waiting, their Primarch had arrived. The excitement was palpable. At last, their true commander was there to lead them, to shape their legion into one in his own image. The story of Angron being the only Primarch who had refused the order of the Emperor quickly spread. Knowing that Angron would rather have died with his army than join the Emperor's crusade only added to the Warhound's enthusiasm. What Primarch could better understand true brotherhood than the one who rejected the Emperor to stand with his brothers? Even after the death of Gear, the Warhounds were euphoric in their excitement and completely devoted to serving their gene father. Angron, on the other hand, was feeling much different than his new sons and struggled to accept his role of serving the Emperor.
Yep.
He quickly became acquainted with his legion and life outside of Nuceria. No longer was he leading a group of ravenous, ailing gladiators who were armed with only sticks and rocks. The meticulously trained, genetically enhanced Astartes of the World Eaters were killing machines on a level that Angron could have never imagined.
If you don't understand, and I hate to pause it again, I really, really do, but if you want to understand Angron really, really well, Betrayer from the Horus Heresy is your book. It is your book. I recommend it in audiobook format, my personal opinion.
killing machines that the Emperor had deployed to conquer worlds that were lost during Old Night.
No, he wouldn't have.
Karn had introduced Angron to the
slept.
campaign of liberation known as the Great Crusade, and found himself toiling to overcome Angron's hesitancy to participate.
Again with this compliance talk. I already told you, Karn. I don't understand it. I don't care about it. I don't know why you insist on living as a slave.
Sire, I feel as if there is a misunderstanding. We embark on campaigns to bring worlds into compliance with the Imperial truth. Worlds where Xenos dwell, creatures from the warp. Worlds where humans have been led astray and have not accepted the rule of the Imperium.
Rule of the Imperium. This Emperor is just another High Rider, keeping humanity in shackles unless they comply with his word. I want nothing to do with this.
With all due respect, sire, I believe you are mistaken. Compliance campaigns don't enslave worlds, they free them. Bringing a world into the Imperium doesn't keep people in shackles, it breaks them.
And what if a world refuses to join the Imperium?
Big E with Godfrey's voice. Do you really want me to do Gilbert Godfrey's voice with this? Let me... No, I'm not gonna do it. Oh, God! Troy, why? No! Come on, man! Angron's rule is sanguineous. Angron likes sanguineous. There were very few people... There wasn't really a single Primarch that didn't like sanguineous. Like, period.
Then we take the necessary
Except maybe
actions to
Mortarian,
ensure
but who
they
cares
comply.
what Mortarian thinks?
Why are you speaking in riddles, Karn? Tell me of these necessary actions.
We assault those who reject the Imperium, sire. We strike the planet, attacking it from our ships. We invade the planet and engage in battle on the ground. Oftentimes, worlds willingly join the Imperium, and there is no need to strike. But this is not always the case.
The nails were pounding in
that art
Angron's
is
head.
awesome.
The thought of doing anything to support the Emperor was an idea that Angron loathed. But he was suffering from the relentless agony brought on by the butcher's nails, and he started to think of the bloodshed that the Emperor's compliance would bring. Bloodshed that could soothe the pain from the nails.
Tell me, Karn, how long are these compliance campaigns?
A campaign continues until the world willingly joins, or until it is completely liberated. The length of time differs in each campaign.
Angron paused for a long moment before he replied to Karn.
31 hours.
I'm sorry, sire?
31 hours was all we needed in Decimation to defeat the High Riders. No explosives, no bolters, no ship bombardments. We fought with rocks. We fought with our bare hands. The World Eaters will have 31 hours to bring a world to compliance.
Angron, what you accomplished on Nuceria is remarkable, but I'm not sure 31 hours is enough time to take an entire world. Some worlds, perhaps, but others...
If tens of thousands of warriors such as you, with powerful weaponry and armor, cannot take a world in 31 hours, then they don't deserve to stand on the battlefield. No excuses. If I am to lead them, there will be no other way.
By your word, Angron.
And so began the rebirth of the Warhounds, re-emerging under Angron's leadership as the World Eaters.
By the way, this was a thing. 31 hours to take a world, and don't be a second late. And I want you, when you... Because I know what's coming next. I know what's coming next. If you are wondering how the wider Imperium viewed the World Eaters at this point, remember, The High Lords of Terra damn near had a panic attack. When Perturabo decimated his legion once.
The Legion's participation in the Great Crusade was more rooted in Angron's needs than the Emperor's. And as the Great Crusade carried on, this word took on an entirely new meaning. Compliance.
This music is nice.
A compliance campaign now meant killing every last soul on the world that was being invaded in less than 31 hours. If this was not completed, Angron would enforce a new mandate. Decimation. Angron sought to root out the weakness of his new legion, and failure to meet Angron's standard did just that. Each time the World Eaters failed to take a world within 31 hours, 1 out of every 10 in the Legion was to be killed. The consequences of decimation were substantial, and the unease of facing it started to loom over the World Eaters like a dark cloud.
Excellent chat if you don't know what decimation
Over
is.
the next number of years, the Legion transformed itself under Angron's leadership. As the Warhounds became the World Eaters, and the flagship Adamant Resolve became the Conqueror, the once honorable and strategic compliance campaigns of the Warhounds devolved into ruthless bouts of slaughter. The World Eaters continued to change, and their image and reputation in the eyes of the other Astartes legions also began to shift. As the Great Crusade continued on, even some within the World Eaters began to quietly question their new direction. The dreams of serving under a tactical genius like Rebute Guilliman or a heroic warrior like Sanguinius slowly started to wash away. The World Eaters couldn't truly understand the pain that Angron felt from his genetic implants, but they saw how they affected him. When they were engaged in battle, Angron was a force to be reckoned with. The nails turned this already fierce, unstoppable warrior into a complete embodiment of war. He was impossible to contain, slicing and tearing through every enemy that dared to stand in his way. It was when the Legion wasn't in battle that proved to be problematic. Angron was impatient, short-tempered, and completely devoid of empathy. He would fly into fits of rage out of nowhere, smashing servitors to mere fragments of circuitry and leaving gaping holes in the quarters of the Conqueror.
Troy, you just that is absolutely correct. That is absolutely correct. Troy said, I think he wanted them, meaning the World Eaters, I truly believe, to say no to him. And that's accurate. Angron did not respect his legion. He didn't even like them. Just didn't. Because none of them had the balls to stand up to him. None of them.
Many World Eaters had gone years without Angron ever acknowledging their existence, as their Primarch would frequently stalk past them without even making eye contact. The World Eaters continued taking worlds in the name of compliance, but they frequently failed to do so in less than 31 hours.
Not really, Black
Then,
Wolf.
During one particular compliance, something happened that changed the fate of the World Eaters forever.
Avalon, you're gonna like this.
Angron had vanished.
Well, you're gonna like what comes soon.
Karn had ordered every officer aboard every ship to search for Angron, but each report came back the same. Angron was nowhere to be found. After comparing the results of a deep Auspex scan to the inventory World Eater ships, it was discovered that one was missing. Descending Edge. Not wanting to derail the current campaign, Karn left it in the hands of his trusted officers and set out with a small team to find Angron. Karn combed through the galaxy for 2 years in search of his Primarch. Although he would never admit it, Karn began to lose hope. After years upon years of waiting for his Primarch to surface, he finally did, only to disappear without a trace shortly after taking command of the Legion. Karn swore that he would either return of Angron, or he would not return at all. He was prepared to spend the rest of his life searching for him. But then, the ship crew spotted something in orbit, floating silently above a dark world. Something that resembled the long-missing descending edge. Karn didn't need to step foot on the ship to know what he would find. Or more specifically, what he wouldn't find. The small escort ship was gone too long and too far away from feasible resupply points to have any survivors on board.
Meaning Angron killed
As
them.
the officers who journeyed through the stars of Karn boarded Descending Edge, Karn made planetfall to the world below to search for his Primarch. Unbeknownst to Angron, Karn had Mars-forged transponders installed within his power armor. As time went on and Angron's behavior became more unpredictable, Karn correctly assumed something like this may happen. And while they weren't designed for long-range tracking, Karn knew that if Angron was on-world, he would now be close enough to locate him. He cut through thick jungles and a seemingly endless amount of trees, following a path that had been created. As he followed, his auspex indicated that Angron was nearby. He walked for 6 hours, and as the sun set above him, he stood at the entrance to a massive cave. Karn's auspex beeped again, telling him what he already knew. Angron was here. He entered the cave, walking slowly and looking thoroughly in every direction. After only a short time in the cave, Karn heard a low, deep voice bellow out from the darkness.
You found me, Karn.
Angron.
Karn, leave me alone.
Sire, you
All
know
right,
I didn't come all
sleep.
this
You
way
have a
to
nice
leave
day.
without you. We have spent 2 years searching for you.
I don't care, Karn.
Your sons are without their leader, Angron.
I don't have any sons. My sons died on Nuceria. Oh, they died without me. You, the Legion, the Crusade. None of this was my choice. None of this was my destiny. Your pathetic Emperor ripped my destiny from my hands when he put me on your ship and left my brothers and sisters to die. I don't want to hear about my sons, or what you or they or anyone needs from me. I was finally free, finally in charge of my own destiny. And in the blink of an eye, it was all gone. You may call me your father, your sire, your Primarch, but
Box
I'm
in the
just
void, Avalon.
another slave to the High Rider Emperor, living out his destiny.
It pained Karn to hear this, but he understood. From the moment Angron landed on Nuceria, he had not been in control of his own fate.
And what will you do here? Hide in this cave forever?
I'll die. I'll stalk this world until something kills me, the way I should have been killed on Nuceria.
I acknowledge your pain.
You can never understand my pain. Ah! They never stop. Ah! There is no peace.
Come back, Angron. We can continue fighting in the Crusade, and the pain will subside.
No! None of you are strong enough. Ah! The campaigns have been riddled with failure, Karn. You are all focused on the wrong things. When I look at you, your brothers, I don't see warriors. There is too much talking, too much planning, too much diplomacy.
Then we can learn from you, Angron. You can train us.
No, I can't. Ah! You could never do what I do in battle. You don't feel the pain of the nails. You don't hear them sing as you fight, pushing you to butcher your enemy. You don't have the butcher's nails, Karn.
Karn looked into Angron's eyes and stepped closer.
But what if we did?
This is when the Legion really, truly fell And this is when Angron lost all real respect for them. Yeah, this is when all that disappeared. It's because despite everything that the world leaders did to try to appease Angron was a lost cause from the second the Emperor did what he did.
He may have been fighting the Emperor's crusade, and he wasn't leading his true brothers, the ones who died alone on Nuceria. But for the first time in decades, Angron felt invigorated. This is what was missing. The Butcher's nails were the missing link, the link that would finally build the bond of Angron and his World Eaters. He had ordered Galen Surlak, a seasoned World Eater's apothecary, to replicate the Butcher's nails for mass production. And he made it known to the World Eaters that when they were able to produce them, he expected everyone in the Legion to undergo the surgery. Many of the World Eaters shared Angron's enthusiasm for the Butcher's nails. They believed that if they were to receive the implants, they would finally be able to relate to their Gene Father. They would only concentrate on what mattered. They were supposed to be the weapon of the Emperor. Leave the statesmanship and world building to the Ultramarines.
Yeah, leave it to them.
Leave the care and compassion to the Salamanders.
Yeah.
The World Eaters would be the bloody axe of the Imperium. Surlak was brilliant and proficient in everything that he did, but he was mystified by the Butcher's nails. The technology wasn't terribly different from other augmentations that he had seen, but getting it to interface with a living brain proved to be extremely challenging. And his attempts at duplicating the nails failed miserably. He made multiple attempts, but none of the World Eaters who were subjected to the surgery survived. The Great Crusade continued for years, and Galen continued tweaking his prototypes. He tried new methods of implantation, different incision points, but nothing worked. At the same time, the World Eaters continued to fail in bringing worlds to compliance in 31 hours, and as Angron's patience began to evaporate, their next campaign proved to be a tipping point. An Imperial world known as 9315 had gone quiet, and Terra had not received any communication from it in many years. The call was sent out to investigate, and it was the World Eaters who answered. Following a brief investigation, the World Eaters determined that the humans on 9315 were killed. In their place, Xeno life forms masquerading as humans settled on the planet, referring to it as Genna. Upon being notified of the situation, Angron ordered the compliance campaign. Unlike other campaigns, however, Angron stayed on the ship and left the fighting to his legion. And the consequences that came from what happened on Genna are still being felt to this day. Thousands of World Eaters descended upon Genna and marched towards the city gates. Led by Centurion Majo, they were prepared to fight Xeno resistance, but they were surprised to find no enemies at all. Instead, the people of Genna walked towards the Astartes with their hands at their sides. They had no weapons, no shields, nothing. No emotion shone across their faces as they walked towards the World Eaters. The World Eaters were more confused than alarmed, but that would soon change. As the Gennans marched towards the 12th Legion Astartes, they quickly found themselves overwhelmed. They weren't attacking, but there were so many of them that the World Eaters started to get weighed down by their sheer numbers. Realizing that they were soon to be trampled by the millions of Gennans that were flooding the streets, they made a decision. And for one of the last times, a World Eater would utter these words. Centurion Majo spoke into his Vox unit.
For the Emperor, and for Angron.
The Astartes warriors began butchering the Gennans in the street, attacking them at will. Bolter fire, las rifle blasts, power spears. They brought forth the full force of their arsenal. But it made no difference. There were millions of Gennans marching upon them, and there was nothing that they could do to slow them down. 31 hours became 15. 15 became 1. And eventually, a tone sounded within the helmet of every Astartes on Genna's surface. Time was up.
Ah.
They had failed to take the world in 31 hours, and were once again faced with decimation. The World Eaters stood silently in front of their Primarch. No one dared to utter a word. The air in the hall was thick with nervous tension. Angron spoke, but it wasn't necessary. Everyone knew what was to come next. 1 out of every 10 World Eaters was to sacrifice their life for their failing. It was a formality that the World Eaters had become all too familiar with. But in a moment that left everyone in the hall utterly stunned, Centurion Majo stepped forward and spoke.
Yep.
No.
The tension in the room was now suffocating. Everyone in attendance was in complete disbelief. Angron stepped closer to Majo and stared down at him with a fiery gaze.
What did you just say?
I mean no disrespect, Father, but we cannot do this. We have already suffered greatly on this crusade. We cannot continue killing our own.
Angron took another step towards Majo.
You're brave, Mago.
Yeah.
Speaking your mind. Refusing your commander's orders. I doubt anyone else would have the courage to speak so freely.
Angron turned away from Majo and slowly walked away.
You and your warriors are responsible for this suffering you speak of. I will say it again. 1 in 10. Step forward.
Father, we cannot.
Angron kept his composure the first time Majo spoke, but he did not the second time. Angron picked up his axe, Widowmaker, and stomped towards the neatly assembled World Eaters. The nails were screaming, and Angron swung Widowmaker in a perfect harmony with the nails. He was blind with rage and striking indiscriminately at anyone and everyone.
Yep.
Decimation was one thing, but Angron had lost control of his body. He was overcome by violent fury. The World Eaters' librarians feared that Angron may kill everyone. They made a split-second decision to use their psychic abilities to stop Angron's rampage. By channeling a memory within Angron's mind, they hoped it could subdue him long enough to end his violent outburst. Memories of Angron's past flickered throughout his mind. A long-forgotten vision of a young Angron standing in the snow of the Deshayan Mountains was enough to end the slaughter. The World Eaters watched in horror as Angron fell to his knees and collapsed to the ground. Angron wasn't dead, but the psychic interference from the librarians had rendered him unconscious.
Yep.
With their Primarch in a psychic coma, the World Eaters were safe from Angron's rage. But the cracks within the Legion's foundation began to show themselves. The 12th Legion were never happy to fail their Primarch. But the fallout from this defeat was different. A divide was forming within the Legion. On one side, there were the Astartes that wanted the Butcher's Nails. They believed it would strengthen their Legion and allow them to become what they were supposed to be. On the other side, there were those who believed that the Butcher's Nails would spell doom for the World Eaters. They argued that if they were to become as mentally and emotionally unstable as Angron, that the Legion would completely collapse.
Yep.
Majo believed the nails were a curse. Khan believed they were a savior. And this was the primary topic of discussion as the two Astartes clanked their axes in the dueling pits of the Conqueror.
You are lucky to be alive after challenging Angron the way you did.
This Legion is coming undone, Khan.
It's evolving.
Evolving? Into what exactly? Thousands of us have been killed by our own blades, and all because a world wasn't taken in 31 hours?
Yep.
It's what our Primarch demands, Mago. Who are we to question him? Every Legion has its difficulties, its quirks. Don't forget how long we went without a commander. Angron is laying the groundwork for the 12th.
We had a commander, and then he was murdered almost as soon as our Primarch arrived.
Yeah, this happens.
Gear was a placeholder. He wasn't a Primarch. Now, I have no ill words to speak of Gear, but I don't think you're giving Angron enough time.
I'm concerned for the future of the 12th. We are slowly dying from these decimations, and now there's talk of giving us all the nails.
Come on, you want the nails, come on.
It isn't talk. It will happen. They're getting closer to a prototype that can be implanted in all of us.
Then they should be rejected. By all of us. Look at what Angron did earlier today. Do you believe that we would benefit from being more like him?
I believe that we should have been victorious on Genna. I believe that if we had the nails, that so many of our brothers that you lament the loss of would still be here.
I'm not arguing that we wouldn't be powerful forces in battle, Khan. It's impossible not to admire what Angron does in combat. But there is a life outside of combat. And the nails will destroy that.
Yep.
Our reputation amongst the other legions would be tarnished.
We're not here to maintain a polished reputation. We're here to wage war. To be the sword of the Emperor. Whether we have the nails or not, our mission remains unchanged. Our Primarch believes that the nails will aid us in achieving that mission, and I agree with him.
With the nails, the only thing I see is an existence where we abandoned who we are and become something else. Physical incarnations of rage.
And maybe, Mago, that is exactly what we should become.
Yeah, this is going to be a great story to tell the grandkids.
It had taken Golan Surlak years to get to this point, but he was finally on the verge of a breakthrough. After the failed compliance of Genna, Karn had brought Apothecary Surlak one of the Xeno corpses so he could study it. And after dissecting the body and inspecting it, he learned that the Gennan corpse was not a Xeno after all. It was a machine. After running a series of tests, Surlak had determined that the Gennans were wired to receive a signal, which meant that the millions of Gennans were not marching upon the World Eaters by their own free will. They were being controlled remotely by human minds. Surlak's discovery prompted a hypothesis. If the Gennans were not operating under their own control, and their actions were being dictated by human minds, was it possible that there could be a connection to the Butcher's Nails? With Angron still in his psychic coma, Surlak was able to study the Primarch's implants more closely than ever before. He spent the next several days poring over the data he had acquired, comparing the information obtained from the dead Gennan's body to that of Angron's nails. The results were astonishing. The archaeotech utilized in Angron's implants was nearly identical to the Gennan technology that Surlak had been studying. This was it. This was the discovery that he had been hoping for. The missing piece that can ensure his replication successfully interfaced with a living brain. He wasn't 100% certain yet, but if his theory was correct, if the Gennan technology was in fact based on the same standard template construct of Angron's nails, then the code had been cracked. Surlak immediately went to work, carefully constructing his new duplicate nails to the specifications of the Gennan technology. And after days with his head down, working in his lab, his prototype was finished. All that was left was to test them on a live subject. Surlak understood that there would be hesitancy amongst the Legion. Dozens of World Eaters had already died from previous versions of the nails, and there was no guarantee that it would be any different this time. He summoned the Legion to the Triumph Hall of the flagship. Surlak had waited years to make this announcement. The Butcher's Nails had arrived. All that he needed was a volunteer. A voice in the crowd of the World Eaters spoke and walked through the gathering of Astartes. Surlak smiled as his volunteer stepped forward. Karn removed his helmet.
Troy, I know y'all probably can't hear that, but it just started raining real heavily outside. Do a poll. Zincher Korn for that left Genans? Can you rephrase that, Troy, so I can understand what you're asking for a little bit better here? Thank you, though.
And smiled back at Surlak. He was ready for the nails.
There we go.
With Karn laying on an operating table in the apothecary's lab, A nervous excitement began to build up within Galen Serlek. He was surrounded by medical equipment and buzzing servitors. The surgery was almost complete. A casual eye would not be able to differentiate between Angron's nails and those that Karn was receiving. Sleek, silver cabling wrapped around the back of Karn's head and connected to the nails inside. As the last connection clicked into place, his eyes opened. He was disoriented, unaware of where he was. Beads of sweat formed at the top of his head, slowly dripping down his face. A voice was speaking in the background, but Karn couldn't make out the words. He looked down and saw his hand shackled to the table he was on. Whether it was pure coincidence or a divine event, I'm unsure anyone will ever know. But as the nails began to pulse in Karn's head for the first time, as he lost control of his emotions, ripping the shackles from the bed with terrifying force, Angron suddenly woke up. And this was the moment that the divide in the World Eaters deepened beyond repair.
Yep.
With a reliable production of the Butcher's nails ready for implantation, the World Eaters on one side of the divide stood ready, waiting for their opportunity to receive the gift of their Primarch, while those on the other side of the divide organized a coup. Centurion Majo understood that it was the technology from the dead Gennans that led to the creation of the nails, and he believed that there could be more information on Genna, information that could lead to the removal of Angron's nails. If he could get there in time, it was possible that he could save his broken Primarch. The news of
Magos
Angron's
was a real
awakening
one.
and Karn's successful surgery spread across the World Eaters like wildfire. Majo knew he didn't have much time. He needed to make planetfall to Genna, but as he was soon to learn, it was too late. The World Eaters had passed the point of no return. Angron and his new warriors were already on the ground. As more of the Gennan machines poured into the streets, they were met with a violent death. Nearly 1,000 World Eaters with silver cables dangling.
Which of the gods left those bodies on Nuceria? This was not by accident. The Legion is being manipulated. Tzeentch, Khorne, or Dark Eldar? Khorne wouldn't care enough to manipulate anybody. The Dark Eldar would not care. They got other things to do right now. And I can't say them on YouTube without fear of having my channel stricken from the record. The only one left is Tzeentch.
From the backs of their heads, rampaged again in machines. There was no discipline in sight, no plan of attack. The World Eaters, their heads freshly equipped with their new engines of madness, were berserkers. Angron, Karn, and Galen Serlek hunted down the humans that were controlling the Gennan machines. And in a spire in the middle of the burning capital city, they found them. When they entered the spire, they found hundreds and hundreds of small machines. They were stacked on top of each other, and each one housed a human. Galen Serlek theorized that the humans on Genna had built these machines to keep themselves alive, and using the technology that was now responsible for mass production of the Butcher's nails, they controlled the proxy humans on the world. Angron looked around the room in disgust.
Kill them all. I don't want a single one of them to survive.
And with that order, Majo's hope of saving his Primarch died. Majo and his supporters walked down from the ramp of their gunship and stepped foot onto Genna. They couldn't believe their eyes. The World Eaters were unrecognizable, destroying everything in their path. He watched in disgust as one of his crazed brothers swung his sword over and over at a Gennan corpse that was long dead.
Yep.
They headed into the city center and found it in shambles. Buildings were on fire. Dead Gennans lined the blood-soaked city streets. And in the distance, Majo saw his Gene Father standing outside of a crumbling spire. He slowly approached him and felt a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach as his eyes fell upon Karn. Cables from the nails now dangled from the back of his head. The bloodshed and destruction surrounding him was not a compliance campaign. It was a civil war. World Eaters with the nails were pummeling their brothers that rejected the implants, mercilessly slaughtering them and then searching for the next victim as they screamed into the air.
Karn, It didn't have to be this way.
Khan laughed, then turned his head to look into Majo's eyes.
Yep.
It did have to be this way. There was never going to be another way.
There is no saving me. Angron, your Primarch, died before you even knew he existed.
Yeah.
He died on Nuceria. All that's left is the murderer, the bloodthirsty killer that the High Riders created. I've heard enough of your voice, Mago. So if you have any last words you want to say to your pathetic emperor, speak them now.
Yeah.
He never had a chance to reply. Khan's axe struck Majo at the neck.
Bye, Majo.
And as his lifeless body hit the ground,
Effing chat for
a new
Majo.
chapter of the World Eater's story began.
It is only appropriate that is storming now. It is only appropriate that is storming now.
After what is now referred to as the Second Compliance of Genna, the World Eaters were never the same. The Butcher's nails were being produced en masse, and those remaining that did not have the cybernetic implants wouldn't be without them for much longer. As the World Eaters continued on the Great Crusade, their compliances became more and more ruthless. And as Mago prophesied prior to his untimely death, the reputation of the World Eaters had indeed become tarnished. The constant decimations, the erratic behavior of the World Eaters after having been implanted with the Butcher's nails, attacks on Imperial allies during cooperative campaigns. It was concerning behavior, and the other Primarchs became disgusted with Angron. Leman Russ feared that Angron was spiraling out of control, and that he was taking his legion down with him. And in a bold act of intervention, Leman Russ confronted Angron about the continued atrocities the World Eaters were committing. Some theorize that the Emperor ordered Russ to intervene.
Nope.
While others believe that Russ took the confrontation upon himself.
Yep.
Regardless of who made the decision, it came as quite the surprise to the Conqueror's bridge crew when their Auspex detected unusual warp activity. Surprise turned to alarm when the Auspex readouts confirmed that the activity was a ship emerging from the warp. The ship that was approaching them was the Hrankel, the Space Wolves' flagship. And it wasn't alone. It hadn't been long since the Gennan city of Malkoya had been ravaged by Angron in the 12th. The city's wounds were still fresh. Blood and debris was still scattered throughout what remained of it. And in the fields just outside of the destroyed capital, Russ and Angron met, each flanked by their legions of Astartes.
Brother, I can no longer sit idle while you destroy your own legion.
Russ,
murdering your
Avalon,
own
you're gonna like
sons
this.
in the name of decimation.
Murder. Eliminating the Legion's weakness is not murder. And who do you think you are to tell me what I should be doing? I don't take orders from you, Russ.
What you are doing is wrong. Compliance is one thing, Angron, but you are committing genocide.
Oh, yeah.
Slaughtering entire worlds of civilians who are attempting to surrender is not furthering the Emperor's cause. Your implants are fueling this lunacy, and it must be corrected. All of us, the World Eaters and the Space Wolves, are to return to Terra so that these implants could be removed.
You act as if the Emperor himself hasn't ordered genocide.
Boom.
You all lie to yourselves and call it compliance?
Boom.
But is there a single world that you or I have liberated during this crusade that had a choice? Comply with the word of the Emperor or die? That is not a choice. That is slavery. But these are the Emperor's orders, brother.
You disgust me, Angron.
Go on your way, Russ. And know that you ever talk down to me with this unmerited dream of authority again, there will be consequences.
Both the Space Wolves and the World Eaters could sense that the situation was about to escalate, and the Primarchs could feel their tension. Leman Russ spoke through gritted teeth.
I'm leaving, but you're coming with us. We're closing the chapter on the Butcher's nails.
I'm going nowhere. You and your rabble of moon-howling cowards are less than an afterthought to me. You lead your legion, and I will lead mine. Why don't you make yourself useful and return to the Emperor's great enslavement crusade?
Your disloyalty is shameful, Angron.
You've spoken enough, Russ. Now you listen to me. You are no more loyal than I am. I have slaughtered countless innocent souls just like you. The only difference is that I do it in service to the nails, to ease the pain. I follow the Emperor's orders, Russ. But I don't do it under a false pretense of morality. Maybe, if I was as principled and righteous as you, I would have taken our bastard father's skull.
Leman Russ couldn't hold back any longer. He threw himself at Angron, swinging his chain blade with fury. The two Primarchs parried each other's vicious attacks. Russ was winding up to strike Angron, but he was overpowered by a blow from Angron's Widowmaker. As the two Primarchs stood across from each other, snarling in anger, their legions were suddenly attacking each other. Whether the first strike originated from the Space Wolves or the World Eaters is unknown, but it didn't take long for sheer chaos to ensue. The two legions erupted into violence around the dueling Primarchs. Russ was fully aware that he was outmatched in combat against Angron. He was too strong, too fast, and Angron was so unhinged that he didn't care if he killed his own brother.
True.
He didn't pay any attention to what was going on around them, and that was the point that Leman Russ was attempting to make.
Do you understand, Angron?
I am never with Russ on this. Other Weird Meg fire the first shot because he's an idiot. I agree with this statement.
Look at what's happened to your sons.
As Angron took his eyes off his brother, he found himself surrounded by Space Wolves. In every direction, the sons of Russ had their bolters aimed directly at Angron. Past them, the World Eaters were still engaged in combat and were getting the better of the Space Wolves.
You should be more concerned about what's happening to your sons, Russ.
Angron, look at your sons! They're so deranged that they don't even realize that you're about to die.
Leman Russ was correct. At any moment, the Space Wolves surrounding Angron could rip through him with a storm of bolter fire.
They're too busy winning the battle to worry about that.
Leman Russ was trying to send Angron a message. He was trying to show him that the Butcher's nails weren't the advantage that he thought they were, that blind rage is actually a hindrance. And as Leman Russ lay on the ground, bloodied and bruised from his brother, he realized what many others would soon come to see for themselves. Angron was slowly losing himself to the nails, abandoning what little remaining logic and reason he had left. Russ howled towards the sky, rallying his sons by his side, and they fled towards their Stormbirds. The World Eaters were so caught up in the nails-fueled bloodthirst that they didn't even realize the battle was over until the Space Wolves were gone. Angron laughed, believing himself victorious. And as the Rankel sailed into the stars, Leman Russ sat alone, coming to the sobering realization that Angron couldn't be saved.
This is the conundrum that is Leman Russ in 30K. Depending on who's writing him, you either have a person who deeply cared about his brothers or an abject moron, egotistical, who could not for 1 second believe that he could be fooled. On and on and on again, we see this from Lehman Russ. So it really depends on the writer. It really depends on the writer. And it's a persistent thing with him. But with the interpretation of Russ, you really have to take a look at what Ingol was. And in this particular instance, you know, Angron won the physical battle, but lost the moral battle. He did. But Angron didn't care about that. Russ was there to appeal to his brothers, you know, don't you like your legion, all this other kind of stuff. But Lehman had no idea that Angron couldn't care less about his own life or that of his legion. He couldn't care less. He just didn't care anymore. True, Rena, sorry.
As fate would have it, Angron wasn't the only Primarch headed down a destructive path. Lorgar, Primarch of the Word Bearers.
Fucking Lorgar. Fucking Lorgar!
Was pushed towards the ruinous powers of the Dark Gods after being publicly humiliated by the Emperor and Rebute Guilliman. And following the events of Davin, Horus, the War Master and Primarch of the Luna Wolves, was also tempted by the powers of chaos. Lorgar used this opportunity to manipulate Horus, and the seeds of betrayal were sown. After the corruption of Horus, the War Master sought to overthrow the Emperor. And these traitorous ambitions gave birth to the Horus heresy.
And also male pattern baldness, of which I am a victim.
As the heresy began to take shape, Horus was able to convince half of the other Primarchs to join his cause. There were some Primarchs that needed a fair amount of convincing. Angron was not one of them.
Nope.
It wasn't that Angron stood with Horus. It was that he hated the
I've been saying that
Emperor.
for years, Avalon.
And the heresy was the perfect opportunity to exact revenge on the man who left his brothers and sisters to die on Nuceria. On the planet of Istvaan III, Vardis Prol, the corrupt Imperial governor, had suddenly raised his banner in rebellion of the Imperium. Ordered to prevent the uprising, Horus still appeared the dutiful son and called the Emperor's children, the Death Guard, and the World Eaters to his side. And though on the surface it appeared that Horus was fighting in service of the Emperor, he was actually preparing to fire the first shots of a monstrous and vile civil war. Thousands of loyal Astartes landed and set to work slaughtering those who had betrayed the Imperium. Never knowing that the true betrayal had only just begun. Those on the ground at Istvaan had landed with the intent to honor their fathers. Their fathers repaid them with death in the form of virus bombs. For a number of World Eaters, even with their brains distorted from the butcher's nails, this was too far. They had been willing to abandon nearly all of their ideals, but they could not go as far as betraying the Emperor. Angron punished them for this refusal.
True.
Against the will of Horus, Angron landed 50 companies of World Eaters to kill.
True, Emperor. Angron never betrayed the Emperor because you can't betray someone you were never loyal to begin with. I said that way back in the day about Angron.
His remaining loyalist sons. The World Eaters who had rejected the nails had been purged during the second compliance of Genna. The second purging of the World Eaters occurred on Istvaan III, when those that refused to betray the Imperium were murdered. And the last glimmer of hope for the World Eaters died in fire, along with the planet. Following the initial battles of the heresy, it was clear that the galaxy would never be the same, and Angron continued to slip further and further from who he once was. As some within the Legion would come to learn, the butcher's nails produced by Garland Serlak were slightly different than Angron's originals.
Yep.
The nails created at scale were simply low-quality copies of the originals. They rewrote emotional responses and caused deterioration in the ability to reason, but they were not lethal. The nails in Angron's brain, however, were.
Yep.
These marvels of Dark Age technology were not designed for use in a Primarch's brain, and the implants were slowly killing Angron. This degradation was difficult to notice initially, but as time passed, the deterioration became more severe, and Angron became even more erratic, unpredictable, and violent.
Hooray.
The bond that the World Eaters were so eager to share with their Primarch never materialized. They had truly believed that receiving the Butcher's nails would unify them with their Gene Father. Instead, the already fractured relationship between the World Eaters and Angron crumbled even further.
That is a beautiful piece of art right there. I'm just saying, that is a beautiful piece of art.
The World Eaters had damaged their own ability to reason and think outside the lines of rage. And Angron was completely broken, a shell of his former self. After the attacks on Istvaan, Angron and Lorgar set off together to execute assaults on the 500 worlds of Ultramar. Erebus and Corferon were to lead a sophisticated attack on Kalth, while Angron and Lorgar were to coordinate a similar attack on Armatura. The journey from the Istvaan system to Ultramar was long and would take months to traverse.
In case you don't know yet, we're about to probably be introduced to the best character in all of Warhammer 40k.
And Lorgar quickly learned just how difficult the journey was going to be. While en route to Ultramar, the two Legions flagships stopped off on the world of Turum to refuel and gather supplies. The resupply effort moved quickly, and within 1 week the Word-Bearers had stripped all of the world's resources. The World Eaters, however, had no interest in the resupply mission. Instead, they remained on world for an additional 10 days, slaughtering the entire population and leaving a path of rubble and ash in their wake. Not long after, a similar incident occurred on the world of Garland Prime. Lorgar sought to send a message to the Imperium by enslaving segments of the population. And once again, Angron and the World Eaters abandoned any thought of cohesion by swarming the surface and annihilating every living molecule. Angron delayed them 3 more times with off-course, unnecessary stops on worlds irrelevant to their mission. Lorgar's patience with Angron was wearing thin, and he reached his breaking point when the World Eater's flagship broke course and began attacking a small group of Eldari ships. The Eldari ships retreated, and Lorgar made comms with Angron via his ship's hololith.
Angron, why are you wasting my time?
The Conqueror was attacked, Lorgar. Ugh. Do you expect me to let that happen?
You were attacked by a group of pitiful Eldari dust mites that retreated as soon as you returned fire. Those ships are irrelevant. Pursuing them will serve no purpose whatsoever, and will only set us back further. Let me remind you, brother, that we are already more than 28 days behind schedule because
it's always the evil bastards in movies and shit that say schedule as schedule. Note that. Look at Star Wars. Look at every other source of media. It's always the evil bastards that say schedule. Just, you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at every bit of media that we've had in the 20th fucking century.
You cannot help yourself.
Even fucking, what's his name, from Jurassic Park said schedule. And if you read the books, that guy was an asshole. I'm not sure why I went off on that tangent. Don't worry about me.
From engaging in nonsensical expeditions that accomplish absolutely nothing.
Then go on without me, Lorgar. We will dispatch the enemy ourselves and reconnect once we're finished.
Please, tell me you are joking. They are not the enemy. You are actively avoiding the enemy by chasing those ships. Guilliman is the enemy. The Emperor is the enemy, Angron. I beg of you, focus.
They are Xenos, Lorgar! And they attacked our ship. They need to be killed. If you are so concerned about this precious mission and being delayed, it would make more sense for you to simply help us, instead of arguing with me.
This
it
is
took
true.
every ounce of self-restraint within Lorgar not to smash his palm against his own face.
Could you do it excessively hard and punch yourself in the face so hard you cave in your skull, bastard?
But he realized that Angron was right. He would have more success arguing with a wall than he would with his brother.
Wow, that makes sense coming from him.
Very well, Angron. I will humor you. One last time. And once we are finished, there will be no more distractions. No more stopping off to set fire to backwater worlds. No more engaging Xeno gunships. No more nonsense. Agreed?
And you're the world...
Angron smiled at his brother from the hololithic display.
Sure, brother. Whatever you say.
The hypocrisy coming off Lorgar is incredible at all times. I'm just saying.
Latara Sarin, commanding officer of the Conqueror, wanted to end pursuit of the Eldari ships.
We're wasting our time out here.
They had been searching for...
Ladies and gentlemen, the mistress of mayhem, the damsel of distress, the ambassador of abs, Latara Sarin. She is here.
For 5 hours, and there was no sign of the enemy ships.
We've been wasting our time.
The goddess of good times and the waifu of war crimes, we're here finally.
Past 3 weeks.
The Auspex hasn't detected anything. We don't see anything. We don't know which direction they went. These Eldar ships don't leave a warp signature. How does he expect me to follow something that leaves no trace?
Latara knew that abandoning the search would infuriate Angron, but she didn't know what else to do. And then, she had an epiphany.
Abs.
Unless we don't follow them at all. They only attacked us once we were alone, after we charged ahead of Fidelitas Lex.
Troy, should have gotten Pippa to do the voice. Yes!
Maybe they thought we were vulnerable. Let's see if we can bait them into attacking us again.
With this theory in mind, Latara decided that attempting to bait the Xenos was a better plan than flying aimlessly around in space. The Conqueror jetted out into the void alone, and it wasn't long before Latara's plan came to fruition.
Enemy ship approaching.
The 3 Eldari ships resurfaced and were now approaching the Conqueror. The enemy ships flanked the Conqueror from multiple sides, but their attacks failed to breach the void shields. Unlike last time, the Conqueror was well prepared for the Xenos.
The Angel of Abs is about to strike.
The World Eater's flagship blasted towards the Xeno ship at full speed. She was going to stop them in their tracks and allow Angron to board their ship to deal with them personally.
Yeah, that's a bad sign.
In a nod to Angron's gladiatorial heritage, the Conqueror was equipped with a unique weapon, the Ursus Claws. Spear-shaped lances the size of smaller escort vessels would be fired at enemy ships, puncturing their hulls. Once they had breached the ship, they would activate their strong magnetic elements, preventing their enemies from evading. Latara ordered her crew to fire the Ursus Claws at the Eldari flagship, and the spears shot clean through the hull. The Xenos realized that they were about to be captured and attempted to flee. But it was too late.
No one runs from the Conqueror.
The magnets activated and the Eldari ship was locked in place. As the Conqueror pulled the ship closer with its barbarous spears, the word-bearers Fidelitas Lex broke through the void and prepared to board the enemy craft.
Oh.
And Latara smiled as she received Vox confirmation that Angron and Lorgar had boarded the ship.
One Primarch is bad enough. 2 Primarchs boarding your boat. It's just not even... The Eldar didn't even hear boss music from Dark Souls at that point, SD. The only thing they heard at that point was the game over portion of that game. The Drone. And the you died. Because, let's just put it this way. If Space Marines board your vessel, you're screwed. A Primarch boards your vessel, you're really fucked. 2 Primarchs board your vessel, intense anal prolapse. How about that?
To no one's surprise, the Eldari on board stood no chance against the 2 Primarchs. As the 2 brothers hacked and sliced their way through the Eldari corridors, they couldn't have been more different in their approaches. Lorgar was slow,
Lorgar's still
methodical,
worthless.
and calculated as he surveyed his surroundings and identified his prey. Angron sprinted like an unchained beast, bellowing as he swung his axe in a turbulent rampage. Lorgar could see momentary flashes of bliss in his brother's crazed eyes each time he ripped through another resisting Xeno.
Yep.
Yet these brief moments of happiness would almost immediately regress into bouts of rage as Angron searched for his next victim.
Yep.
Lorgar had suspected it for many years, but watching his brother up close and personal confirmed it. Angron was dying. Anytime he wasn't spilling blood or raising a city, the nails would punish him by hammering violently inside of his head. Angron's eyes twitched and the blood ran from his nose as he stalked down the corridor.
Yep.
The Eldari resistance was pitiful, almost as if they had already accepted their fate. Their attacks barely made dents in the ceramite armor of the Primarchs, and they didn't even bother retreating as the giant warriors closed in on them. Angron and Lorgar had cleared out the ship in no time, and all that remained was the bridge.
These Xenos make me sick.
The Eldari aesthetic was on full display on the ship's bridge. The Xeno inscriptions and the pungent alien odor was overwhelming. One Xeno remained on the ship, and Lorgar stood by as Angron approached him, dragging his axe on the floor as he walked.
Let us get this over with, brother.
I'll take care of this one myself.
Oh, boy.
Angron was within striking distance of the Xeno when he suddenly began speaking in low Gothic.
Monkai scum. You may kill me, but this is not over.
This is why I never understand the Eldar. I see 2 legions worth of Space Marines flying side by side, and I'm going to fuck with them. And then I get caught. And then they screw with me back. And now I'm mad about it.
We will never allow you to reach your destiny upon the Skull Throne.
The nails were thumping so hard in Angron's head that he couldn't have heard the Xeno even if he was trying to listen. Lorgar was stunned. He tried to speak, but the words were stuck in his throat, still trying to comprehend what he had just heard.
You will die, Monkai, before you can ever become the son of the Blood God.
The Blood God? What did you just say?
Bye.
Those fateful words were the last to ever leave the lips of the Xeno, as Angron's axe fell and swiftly ended his life. It had taken longer than Lorgar anticipated, but they had finally arrived. The Shadow Crusade was about to begin.
Yep.
Calth was the first. Its planetary defense grids were bombarded with scrap code, leaving the world vulnerable to attack. Kor Pharon led the assault, first crashing ships into the planet, then bombarding it with void ship lances and storming the surface with word-bearer titans and super-heavy tanks. And in conjunction with the attack on Calth, Angron and Lorgar were making planetfall on Armatura. Lorgar had spent a considerable amount of time planning the attack on Armatura, but everything changed as soon as their drop pods crashed onto the planet's surface.
Go figure.
The word-bearers were organized, tactical, and communicated every step of the way as they began executing the details of their plan. The World Eaters were a complete mess.
Yep.
Almost as soon as they had landed, they became lost to the nails and separated from their assigned battle groups. The Ultramarines on Armatura quickly realized that the absence of discipline from the World Eaters was a tactical advantage. They began baiting the World Eaters into battle, and then detonated buildings as they charged towards them, crushing massive groups of them under the rubble.
They didn't care.
The word-bearers, witnessing their brother Legion abandon all discipline, opted not to support them when they called for reinforcements, fearing that they could be walking into a death trap. The battle in Armatura was eventually won, but it came at a high cost. Countless World Eaters were killed, Titans were destroyed, and even Angron himself nearly died under the weight of a collapsed building. Now, more than ever before, it was painfully obvious. The Butcher's nails were destroying the World Eaters. With Armatura now in ruins, Lorgar's plan to destroy Ultramar was almost complete.
Yep.
During the Battle of Calth, Erebus unleashed a ruin storm, a massive warp disruption. The warp storm grew in size and strength, feeding off the souls of those that were slain throughout Ultramar. Aboard Fidelidus Lex, Lorgar was revealing the final step of his plan to Angron.
As we destroy Guilliman's empire, there is one last world that must be killed. A world on the fringes of Ultramar. Once this destruction occurs, it will feed into the ruin storm, and we will have constructed a barrier, a wall of dead worlds and warp energy. The Imperium will not be able to save Ultramar. No one will know how to get in or out, except for us.
May I assume that you will get to the point and tell me what this world is?
Oh, Angron. Your impatience never ceases to amuse me.
This guy.
But of course, brother.
Lorgar turned back to the hololithic display, observing the wall of dead worlds and the warp storm running across the length of Ultramar. He pointed to a tiny sphere on the display, just outside the edges of Ultramar.
The killing blow will be dealt here, on Nuceria.
Angron was completely silent as he stared at the display. Then he turned his head and looked at Lorgar.
I am not going back to Nuceria.
Oh boy.
There is no other way to seal Ultramar off from the Imperium, brother.
Of course there is. There are countless worlds outside of Ultramar's borders that could accomplish the same thing. I will never return to Nuceria.
These other worlds you speak of, they will not work for this purpose.
Why won't they work?
You are just going to have to trust me, Angron.
No! 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 Are you doing this just to torment me? You know I swore never to return to Nuceria. Tell me now, Lorgar. Why Nuceria?
To save you. To end your torment. To free you from the nails.
It's impossible, Lorgar. Removing them will kill me.
Maybe. Maybe not. Keeping them in your head is killing you all the same. The Nucerians created the Butcher's nails. If anyone in the galaxy knows how they were created, they will be on Nuceria.
You lied to me. Fed me this drivel of building a barrier.
I did not lie to you. Taking Nuceria will close Ultramar off from the rest of the Imperium. It must be done.
Yes.
But I am also going to save you, Angron. At least, I am going to try.
AKA, he's going to sacrifice him to the Chaos Gods because Lorgar is a dick.
The Conqueror, followed by a fleet of ships, landed in the Deshelica Mountains. It had been more than a century since Angron was last on Nuceria, but even after 100 years, they were still there. The bones. The remains of Angron's fallen eaters of cities. Angron stood solemnly, and tears slowly ran down his face. In all the decades of time spent together, Karn had never witnessed Angron shed a single tear. But Angron's moment of vulnerability was nothing more than that. A single moment. The nails thumped in Angron's head, harder than they ever had before.
This is where it all began. And where it should have ended.
You deserved better, Angron.
Angron drew his chainsword, staring down at Decimation from the mountains.
The High Riders. Those bastards.
And our father. He could have saved your warriors.
He could have.
All of these bones. They could have lived.
Angron was shaking now, the nails slamming in a deafening crescendo.
Decimation must burn, Lorgar. This entire world needs to burn.
Lorgar remained stoic,
Oh, God.
but inside, he was ecstatic. Everything was going according to plan. The World Eaters and the Word Bearers breached the gates of Decimation. Kinguard soldiers watched as they marched through the city. They were confused by what they were seeing, and they conveyed this message to the Praxery of Decimation.
We're not under attack.
No, Lord, but they are within the city walls. There are thousands of them.
What are they doing?
I don't know, Lord, but I think they're coming here.
Before the Praxery could respond, the throne room door swung open. The two Primarchs entered the room, followed by ranks of World Eaters and Word Bearers. And the room fell silent.
Forgive my ignorance. I have been away for many years. Who is the ruling family?
The boy sitting upon the throne didn't say anything, instead letting a Kinguard soldier standing to his left speak for him.
The ruling family is House Thalkir, sir. Is there a matter which we can assist you with?
Thalkir.
All eyes were on Angron as he approached the throne.
Oh boy.
I haven't heard that name in many years.
Who are you?
The soldier said in shaking fear.
The last time I stood on this planet, I was also called Thalkir. Angron Thalkir.
Angron? That's impossible. He couldn't still be alive. He fled the Chelka Mountains nearly 100 years ago. He ran away from the battle. He left his army to die.
Ran.
Effin chat for guard number 65, who is about to become Baloney Miss Cloud number 4 in this story. Because, damn.
And away.
The soldier tried to speak, but was overcome with terror and couldn't form a single word. Angron grabbed the soldier by the head, lifting him up with one hand.
Yep.
Left my army to die!
The nails had taken control.
Yeah, somebody's dying.
Squeezed the life out of the soldier.
Oh, man. How it feels to chew 5 gum. Damn, son.
The Praxery and his defense force gasped as Angron tossed the corpse to the ground.
Nuceria will be destroyed. There will be no survivors.
The 12th and 17th Legions moved quickly, leaving each city on Nuceria in ashes and wreckage.
Yep.
They had spent 6 days ravaging the surface. Lotar Sarin was given specific instructions not to bombard the planet. Angron wanted to handle this himself. Decimation was the first to fall, and they systematically killed the remaining cities one by one. Mehor was the only one that remained, but before the final battle
Hey, warrior,
could even
what's
begin,
up, bud?
A warship broke through the warp and floated in orbit above Nuceria. Courage Above All was piloted by the Ultramarines. They were seeking revenge for the savagery that had been inflicted on Ultramar. The World Eaters and Word Bearers brought down the walls of Mahor and began a devastating assault on the city. Those that weren't crazed by the nails took cover and established primary battle positions. They knew it wouldn't be long before the 13th Legion drop pods rained down from the sky. What began as a simple assault on the only remaining Nucerian city had quickly transformed into an all-out war. Ultramarines flooded from massive lander ships and the 13th Legion drop pods. An entire fleet of ships had followed Courage Above All, and a void battle was raging above the surface war. The Word Bearer's Fidelitas Lex was killed, and it...
F in chat for Fidelitas Lex. Fidelitas Lex got, pummeled.
Crashed down off the Nucerian coast, sending a tidal wave 4 stories high crashing over the city. As the Ultramarines and the two traitor legions engaged each other, Guilliman confronted Lorgar in a decimated city street.
Traitor!
Lorgar drew the Illuminarium, the weapon that Ferrus Manus had crafted for him long before the heresy, and the two Primarchs battled with strength and ferocity beyond the comprehension of mere mortals.
Kauth, Armatura, Erith 5.
Guilliman screamed the names of the dead Ultramar worlds as he swung his sword.
You shouldn't have come here, Robute. You are going to die on this backwater world.
Behind them, Titans clashed and traded cannon blasts. Gunships exploded overhead, and the 13th Legion lander ships avoided the flooded coastline as they continued to provide support. As the two demigods fought, Angron threw himself into the middle of the battle, with a bandolier of skulls forming an X on his chest.
Pitiful to see two of my brothers become heretics.
I'm not your brother, Robute. I never was.
You cannot betray someone you were never loyal to begin with.
You landed on a paradise world with everything given to you. I landed in a slave pit with everything taken from me. I had my brothers and sisters ripped from me, left to die alone.
You could have overcome your past, built a better future for your sons, but those hate engines in your brain ruined you, turned you into this.
Angron knocked Guilliman off balance with a forceful blow, and Guilliman recovered to match Angron with a strike of his own. As Guilliman's fist connected with Angron's face, one of the skulls around Angron's neck flew to the ground. Guilliman took a step and crushed the skull beneath his foot, the skull of one of Angron's fallen brothers. This was the defining moment of the battle, and Lorgar knew it. This moment here was why Lorgar had come to Nuceria. As Angron howled in rage and swung his chainsword at Guilliman, Lorgar began chanting in an ancient, alien language. The power of the warp became a tangible force. The sky went dark and blood rained down from the blackened clouds. Lorgar never stopped chanting. A blinding ray of light beamed down from the sky, and a deafening wall of sound washed over the dying city.
God, where'd he find this artwork?
Guilliman lay on his back, bones broken and bloodied from Angron's wrath. He watched as Angron began clawing at his own face, screaming horrifically into the sky. The blood poured down even harder. Where Angron once stood was now a hulking mass of flames. Metamorphosis. Ascension. Beneath the blaze, Angron's skin was gone. Nothing but inhuman, molten gore remained. Guilliman and the Ultramarines that were now retreating were witnessing the death of a Primarch and the birth of a demon prince.
blood. For the blood god.
Oh, shut the fuck up, Lorgar!
Is he in pain?
Yes.
What did you do?
I saved him.
I hate Lorgar. I hate him. He did this for brownie points. He did this for brownie points. That's all he did. Okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to save my rant for when this is over because I want to skin this bastard.
The man who was once the Warhound's captain of the 8th Assault Company approached the door to the hall where Angron remained. Karn stood outside of the door and quietly spoke to himself under his breath.
I've done this before. He trusts me.
Karn opened the door and slowly walked down the stairs. The sound of the demon's breathing was all that Karn could hear.
Nope.
Karn, I need you to do something.
Anything.
You and your brothers gather 300 souls and take their skulls. Build me a throne.
Alright. Yep. Okay. A lot of people voiced this. A lot of people voicing this. Guys. Oh my god. So they really went all... I knew they were going all out for this. Hey guys. Oh. RC crafts with Dad, finally. Guys, I have no respect for Lorgar whatsoever. What he did to Angron, essentially for his own purposes. He didn't do it out of any love for his brother. He didn't do it to save him. He didn't do it for any of that. He did it for brownie points. Because all he did was take Angron, who was dying. Angron was probably going to last maybe outside of a decade with his rate of deterioration. He was going to go down at some point. He took Angron, whose only goal was to escape his perceived slavery that he was under, and made him into a slave for a far harsher master. And now he can't get away. Angron is probably the only traitor Primarch that I legitimately have pity for. It is true. Hey, Omen, what's up, bud? Talking about Angron. primarily. No, Lorgar doesn't get the highest score. That would be Erebus. Erebus gets the high score of being the biggest dickbag in the Imperial history. Lorgar's a little tattletale that turns on all of his brother for brownie points. This is true. The funniest part about all of this is how Lorgar actually got his comeuppance, because he wanted to be so wonderful and so glorious. He wound up being essentially the Chaos Gods. It was so. They ascended Mortarion before him. Mortarion got ascended before Lorgar. Angron was ascended before Lorgar. Fulgrim was ascended before Lorgar. Magnus was ascended before Lorgar. That's just hilarious. So the Chaos Gods picked their 4 golden boys. Lorgar wasn't any of them. Thanks to Lorgar, Angron is now a never-ending torture. This is true. Warpugs, there's a lot that I hate about Lorgar. And yes, I could turn this into a bash session that would last about 3 hours. But the truth of the matter is that Angron deserved better. He deserved not to have a Eldar Farseer get visions of the future and then promptly throw, at least 40 warriors at him when he was barely walking. He deserved not to be enslaved. He deserved not to sit there and be forced to kill his foster father while having essentially Archaeotech hammered into his skull. He deserved an actual explanation for the Emperor, and the Emperor to actually give a damn enough, because at that point, Angron was the 18th son found. He was the 18th son found. And the Emperor was in a hurry. So, yeah, he screwed up. Abaddon has more points with the Chaos Gods than Lorgar has, yes. A wet towel has more points with the Chaos Gods than Lorgar has. Lorgar is essentially the biggest cheerleader, and it's annoying. It's just so annoying. When you get called the most pathetic thing that Conrad Curse has ever seen, and Conrad Curse spent decades torturing people that were already terrified of him to death for littering, okay? If you're more pathetic than some of those people, to Conrad Curse, you have reached whole new levels of Terabad, okay? The Eldar did. Ronnie, the Eldar did. The Eldar caused all of this. The Eldar caused all of this. The Eldar all the Eldar had to do for about 15 seconds was to stop taking insane amounts of cocaine and blow and calm down the orgy for maybe 20 minutes, and Slaanesh wouldn't have been born. They wouldn't have created the Eye of Terror by their actions. They would not have done half the things that they did. They wouldn't have lost their empire. They would not have lost. They wouldn't have destroyed the Golden Age. I mean, yeah, this is pretty much it. Angron just had his sons build him a timeout chair to sit in when Lotara gets upset when he breaks too much of the Conqueror. This is true. And yes, Lotara at one point actually made a timeout room. Well, she didn't make it. She just used one for Angron. Essentially, when they were in the Siege of Terra, Lotara wound up teleporting Angron into the maze that Conrad Curse had built to house Vulcan. Man, no problem. No problem, guys. No problem, Warrior Tier. I'll tell you this. I did not say too much about what had happened earlier. I wish I had been able to be more involved in this than even I was. But just to let you guys just to basically say my level of involvement in here. My involvement with this was lore. Like lore in general. What happened when happened where, things of that nature. And I like everything that happened in this. I like everything that happened in this. So my role for this was just primarily a lore consultant, and if you really want to know, I helped out with it. I was asked about the thumbnail, so I got to see the thumbnail before you guys did. I can tell you that. It was been a thrill working with Warrior Tier. Every single project, and on some of my projects, the voice of Warrior Tier was the voice of the Mordian Iron Guard video at the front. And I hope that when I get settled in and I can actually calm down at the new address, I want to get back into lore, and I want to start working on more stuff. Like that's what I want to do. I'm actually going to have a chance to develop a soundstage this time, because this sounds horrible to me. Okay, in every video I do, it sounds horrific to me. And I want to build something that cleans that up, and I can't wait to do it. Warpugs, X in chat for Warrior Tier. I got a feeling the next few projects, because I was talking to them for a little bit. I got a feeling of a couple of projects coming down the line. I can't wait to see what's coming next. I really, really can't. It's going to be a thing. You would love to go to the drive with all the art they use, dude. I talked about the art with about the art with the editor, and I'm telling you what, like, they go all out. Okay, they really do go all out. It's a huge effort to find art for lore, really big, and this is 2 hours worth of that. I'm just saying. I need some more decorations in the background. I know, right? I only have a few. Warpugs, I'm going to bounce off of here. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do live stream wise. I do want to do something where I'm doing, I want to do a few more live streams before I get out of here. I want to do shenanigans for the last time before I get out of here and get to the new address. I am not quite sure what things are going to look like once I get there. It's going to be a work in progress. It's going to take some time getting that place the way I want it to be. But that is going to be my permanent studio from this point onwards. A few plushies would do. Will the next stream be Laserpig's new video? Yes, I saw Laserpig's new video come out. I haven't decided. If you guys see something pop up on your feed, I'll be making the decision sometime tonight how I'm going to go to that. I don't know yet. But that'll be it. Rena, that was actually the voicing of the Mordian Commissar was actually Warrior Tier's the voice of Warrior Tier. That was actually him. A Mort plushie? Sounds like a good plan, Omen. Warpugs, thank you for spending some time with the old man tonight. I'm going to head out from here. I am going to try to get things together here. You're going to see some things start to disappear from back here because I'm packing over the next 2 weeks. I don't know when I'm going to be taking things down, but I'm going to take things down sooner rather than later. Avalon, you have a wonderful night. And Warpugs, remember, good times rhymes with war crimes. If this is the first time you're seeing me, remember, check the description down below for all of Warrior Tier's links, including to their store. We already packed up a lot of my shirts. That's why I'm not wearing one. I have two of Warrior Tier shirts. The first, Deathcore Cream, that's my personal favorite right now. But I'm going to head out from here. And I hope you guys have a great day, and thank you for joining me.